Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 144. Today we're doing a full review for Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and joining me this week for the JK Games podcast, Jerica, aka Jerica. Jerica, how you doing? Welcome back to the show.
Feeling good. Ready to talk about Dragon Age.
Let's go.
As much as I can. But I'm doing great. Got a Red Bull.
Let's go.
Tends to be like my drink of choice for, this is not even a late night yet, but 7 o'clock sometimes is a late night. So
sure.
My late night show time, you know.
Hey, I feel that. And also joining us today, the number one variety streamer on Twitch, from twitch.tv/Jake Twitchin. Jake Twitchin himself, the amazing streamer. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here back on Spotlight Games Pod. I wore my pink shirt for this special occasion. It's also a celebration. It's my first time officially doing content with Jerica.
Oh,
good to
you're right.
You know, actually get this all recorded and whatnot. Very cool. It's all
the synergy
here, but,
synergizing. We got Bama in the
good.
chat. We got Cognitive Clips in the chat. Oh, it's going to be a good episode. We do have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod, just like the aforementioned Bama Bruh, Cognitive Clips, and the Dumpster Boy himself. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live so you can be part of the conversation. You've probably noticed we haven't been doing our Spotlight Game streams lately. We're going to get back to that next week. Thanksgiving is this week in the States. Last week, I just didn't want to do it. So we're going to come back next week. So if you have a game that you want to see us stream, me, myself, Rose, maybe someone on this panel, who knows? Let us know, and we'll get to that next week. And finally, join the Discord. We have a fun little Discord where we discuss what we're playing and generally goof off together about video games. So if that sounds like something you'd like, click the link in the description of this video or find it in the bio of our socials to join the Discord. Folks, I've been looking forward to this show for quite some time. I've been wanting to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard so much. But before we do that, I want to check in on some games that we've been playing because that is how we start our shows here at Spotlight Games. So, Jake, I've already said you're the number one variety streamer on Twitch. You play so many games, so many different games all over the place. What have you been playing other than Dragon Age: The Veilguard that you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about? I mean, right now at the top of my list of games that I am very, very interested in talking about is Tetris Forever. I've also been dabbling in Dragon Age 3 HD 2D. I checked out the Dynasty Warriors Origins demo. I rolled credits on Lego Horizon Adventures, for better or worse. It was an okay time. But really hot on Tetris Forever. Should I wax poetic?
Let's jump into
on
some
thing?
Tetris Forever.
Yeah, this is unbelievable game ? It is like, the way that I would describe it, people would come into my stream when I was playing Tetris Forever and they would have a lot of questions as to what's going on here. And the way that I sort of pitched it every time was, this is like one part documentary, one part playable collection of Tetris games, and like not the Tetris games that you know and love. It's the weird Tetris games like Hatris, the sequel to Tetris, and Tetris for the original MS-DOS computer, and it is unbelievable. It's made by Digital Eclipse, so you guys might know from like Atari 50. They also did like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection recently. They are very well known for kind of putting together these like love letter packages that celebrate video games. And this was just such a gamer ass video game. There was like a time, multiple times actually, where like I find myself profoundly affected by stories in like the video game industry from time to time. Sure. And just like celebrating video games as a medium is something that's always really special to me. And this is one of those like the truth is stranger than fiction type stories of like Tetris was such a mess in the way that it was developed. And it's a story that I feel like everybody kind of tangentially knows. Like it's a Russian product that was created during like the USSR and the whole 9 yards over there. It was a whole situation getting that game licensed out to every country that was licensed out in. And it's why there's so many different versions of Tetris absolutely fantastic spend of $35 if you are at all interested in Tetris or video games or documentaries. Tetris Forever.
I definitely want to. I had no idea that this game. I knew it existed because I saw you stream it, but I didn't ever actually watch more than like 5 minutes of that stream for whatever reason. But I didn't know that this was like part history lesson, which I think is so interesting because I've always like generally liked Tetris, but when Tetris Effect dropped a few years ago, that was where I was like, oh, I think I'm a Tetris sicko. And I've loved Tetris 99 when that dropped on Switch. And I've not really played much Tetris in the last several months. So I will certainly be picking up Tetris Forever because I would love to play all the weird little versions of Tetris while also learning about the origins of it. That sounds really fucking cool. Jerica, are you a Tetris person?
It's been a long time. Like that was the first game I think I played on my Game Boy. My mom bought me on our way to Chicago, like driving. It was like an 18-hour drive for us. So I remember getting the first Game Boy and playing a lot of Tetris.
Hell yeah.
But I'm sure I played like here and there. Like based on your description, I was like, I haven't heard of that. And what a unique concept to like tell a story and have all these, from what I could tell, like different versions of Tetris. And I saw like a retro, like looking screen vibe. Like,
yeah,
I look like, can you design like what the gameplay looks like? Or is that just like
it
a
has
different
like
mode?
Crazy different filters. The entire thing takes place over like a timeline. So it's 5 chapters and you start in like the late 70s, early 80s in like the development, and you're playing it on like a really old, just like green and black screen computer. And then as you go through, you watch video excerpts and like stories and look at like pictures and high definition renders of like all of these promotional materials for Tetris. And then as a different version of the game becomes available right inside that timeline where you've been watching things and reading things, you can then just literally click play and then play that version of Tetris. So cool. It's so cool the way that it all just kind of moves along.
That's the type of, I don't know, experiences I needed in school to keep me interested.
Sure.
Like, if you're gonna teach me history, like even though it's like history of Tetris, like gamify it and like let me experience it. I think that's so neat. How cool.
That's really cool. And Dumps More in the chat says most sold game of all time, by the way, Tetris in general. So, but yeah, who'd you say made it?
Digital Eclipse. Okay. Really good.
Checking it out right
They
now.
also did like, I think it's Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story was their other one that's kind of like in this series. Really crazy stuff. Atari 50 is the other one that I plan on checking out on the heels of this, because from what I understand, it's very similar, like retrospective on that console and the multiple Atari consoles, and then playable games through it as well. So that's
cool. I've fucked around with the Cowabunga collection, which was very good. So I already believe in them, but this, when I was capturing the B-roll for the trailer, I was like, why is the first shot a human being? And then I was like, oh, this is like a documentary game. That's
Alexi.
I thought to say that's like, what is this?
Yeah. Jerica, I forgot to check with you before we went live. Have you been playing anything other than Dragon Age that you want to discuss to start the show? No is a fine answer.
I guess I just still, like, we talked about this on our show, but I've been still playing a lot of Pokemon Trading Card Pocket or Player. I call it Pocket. I can't remember what the P stands for at the end. It's okay, good. It does mean Pocket. Okay. Still into that. I love it. I didn't think I'd get into, I don't know if I'm sure y'all have talked about it at some point, but I didn't realize how much I would enjoy like actually battling and like playing with the cards. I thought I'd be just opening the digital cards to get that, that high off.
But the battling is fun
without spending money, huh?
But the battling is really fun.
It's good. They really because I played in Books a Million growing up. I had some cards that show up there. My mom would drop me off, and I've played a little bit. I've always wanted to play with my girlfriend too, and she has never played a Pokemon game ever. Like,
really?
No type of Pokemon game.
Wow.
And I was just like, hey, download this on your phone. At least just open packs, right? So that way, like when trading opens up, maybe I can get some cards that I need.
I need to get Rose in on this. That's a great point.
Listen, but now she's addicted, and this has like been her first Pokemon experience, like game, and just knowing like even for someone like her to have really no experience and it be like as niche as like the trading card game, like they've made something special just at launch. Like it's phenomenal. It might make at least my top 10 games of the year for sure. Maybe the top 5. was this little
Yeah.
Pokemon trading
It's
card
in
game.
my top 10 for sure. It's cracked the top 10. Maury was on the show. I forget if last week was Maury or Cog. Maury was on the show recently, and I talked about how I have been very naughty and I've spent more money than I care to share on this game. But I did finally get all of the main 226.
Nice.
And so I unlocked the secret Pokemon, which is very
Ooh.
cool. Kind of sucks in the actual battle version, but it's cool to have the secret Pokemon. So I've been playing a couple games before we jump into the main. And there's another game of yours, Jake, that I want to hear about. But because as you've noticed, our sweet dumpster boy hasn't been at the podcast for a minute. But we didn't want to lose the dumpster dive. So myself and Jake, we did our own little dumpster diving that we're going to talk about today. The game that I played, I think Cayman has maybe talked about on the show before, but it's so fucking good. I played on this brand new 30th anniversary PlayStation Portal Slayaway Camp. And if you aren't aware of what Slayaway Camp is, it is like a top-down puzzler where you play as the villain in like a slasher horror movie. And it'll show like some gameplay here in a second on the B-roll, but it's like a puzzle where there's this map where you can just go like up, down, left, or right, and you're essentially trying to kill everybody in this like tiny room. But there's all sorts of obstacles in your way, or like things that maybe can kill you, or like they can escape. And it is, as you can tell from the trailer, so overtly gory.
I love how violent it. I did not
so
expect
violent.
it to go that way. That's
when
great.
you start the game, it gives you a prompt. It's like, do you want this to be PG or rated R? PG is like there'll be like flutes as the soundtracks, and like no gore, and rated R is like so much gore. And at first I was like, I just want to see what the PG version is like. And it's like it's like bonk and things like that when you kill somebody. And then I changed it to R, and the amount of blood in this game, by the end of each level, basically the whole screen is covered in blood. As Noah says in the chat, a huge Happy Tree Friends vibe. But I think the kind of, and Cayman might have all said these things, but yes. So for me, the special sauce about this is that the levels are all based off of VHS tapes of different movies. So like one of the first ones that you can unlock is their own version of My Bloody Valentine, which months and months ago we covered on Save Trash Cinema, which is a great 80s horror movie. And so the amount of like detail in this game, it is like a love letter to horror movies. And I was playing it on my Portal earlier today, and I walked out to talk to Rose about it, because like, Rose, I just have to tell you how much fun I'm having in this game right now. And I think you would really like it too, because it is just so goofy, and the puzzles are very short. They're like, so they can take as few as like 15 seconds to get through a level. Like it's that quick instant gratification. And I'm already getting to a point where like some of the puzzles are a bit tough to get by. But I'm having a great time with it. Runs excellently on the Portal. So far, I've had no issues with the Portal. I'm really loving this device, but I'm seeing now how Cayman has been just platinuming games left and right on this thing, because it's so good. So if you haven't played Slayaway Camp, it's like $5 on PSN, I think. If not, it's like 10 at most. But you should go play Slayaway Camp. It's really fucking good. Jake, what dumpster dive did you bring for us?
Speaking of $5 on PSN, I played Spirit of the North, which is this really pleasant little video game. I absolutely love. My first dumpster dive was a huge success. Yeah. I love this little video game. It is not perfect. I don't think this is anyone's favorite game of all time, unless they're really into foxes. But it's a game where you're sort of in a vast, very lonely open world. There are no other living organisms besides yourself. Kind of reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus's world in that way, where you're sort of just traversing like a very lonely area. But I would say gameplay wise, what's happening is more of like a Journey or Abzu type experience, where you're mostly doing some very light platforming and then puzzle solving to progress through like open-ish areas. It starts off fairly linear, then it gets bigger and bigger. Really nice open biomes and very satisfying, I guess, culminations to puzzles. Yeah, it is. It is definitely showing its age a little bit. I don't think it was like it reminds me almost of the way that Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom use what they have going for it, where it's like art style over graphical capability, and it's like credit to their art direction for making something that, despite being maybe a little bit lower quality in graphics than some of its competitors, still looks as beautiful just because of the aesthetic that they're using in these levels. Really, really cool stuff. I kind of gravitated towards it because I remember seeing, I think it was maybe like a Nintendo Direct or a PlayStation State of Play in the last like year, they announced sort of the sequel to it. There was a trailer for it, and I was like, what is this game? Is this new IP? I've never heard of this. And then I said, oh, it's North 2. I go, I didn't even know there was a first one. So we were scrolling through the games trying to figure it out. I looped my chat in on this. I explained to them what a dumpster dive was, and I was like, we're going to find one together. And this one jumped out at me and absolutely loved playing through it.
Hell
Big
yeah.
recommendation.
I've seen this come up on like PSN sales all the time, and I love a fox. So I've considered getting it before. I never have though. But seeing this, I'm certainly intrigued. It's funny you say your first dumpster dive was a success. My actual first dumpster dive, a raging failure. I played a game called Creepy Tale Ingrid Penance, I think it's called. I lasted about 15 minutes. It's like a side-scrolling adventure game essentially, but and like the vibe is good. I didn't capture any B-roll for it, but it's like a 2D plane. You only go left and right. You play this little girl trying to like get out of various situations in this like creepy wood, and it just was really frustrating. Like it was the kind of adventure game from our childhood where it is so obtuse in what it wants you to do that you're just like trying to find anything to click to try to interact with. It's like, this is just not fun. Like I'm 10 minutes in already looking up a solution, which is so fucking dumb when I find out what the solution is. Like, all right, let's find something else, which was Slayaway Camp, which I'm very, very happy for. Before we jump into the topic of the show, Jake, you mentioned you also had played Dragon Quest and Lego Horizon. I am interested to hear about both games. Maybe a quick like minute or so of each, because I'm specifically interested in playing Dragon Quest, but then the way that you talked about Lego makes me maybe potentially less interested in playing that one now.
Yeah, for sure. Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D review copy provided by Square Enix. They came through, and this was already something on my radar that I am very interested in. I'm a big Dragon Quest 11 fan, and also a Dragon Quest 8 fan, but I've never really gone back and played the classics. I had a big affinity for Dragon Quest Monsters when I was a kid, because I would take anything that was even remotely similar to Pokemon, and because of that, I had picked up Dragon Quest 3 on Game Boy Color, but it was like too advanced for me. I was an idiot, and now I'm slightly less of an idiot. But this is a really nice coat of paint and a lot of nice quality of life upgrades on a very classic JRPG. This is a game where, like, if you look at it and you're like, oh, this might be for me, yeah, it's for you.
Cool.
There's going to be no point of friction, jumping into this thing, basically. I really, really liked it. Fun game to dabble with on stream. It also, because it's kind of an older JRPG, you don't have like a really annoying first segment to it. Like there's no like long tutorial. It's not overly wordy. Within 15 minutes, you're in the first dungeon cranking out monsters with a party of 4. Like cool. It's solid. Lego Horizon Adventures review copy not provided by PlayStation.
Those fuckers.
Bought this thing. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was a fun romp. It was nice to spend my chat's money on and not my own money on.
Sure.
I think this is a really tough sell. This game is about 5 hours long. You can get more out of it if you collect everything, but just truthfully, like the collecting and the gameplay in this game is not as fun as you would expect from a Lego game. I think this is not a Traveler's Tales game, and I think the way that they kind of worded this game, calling it Lego Horizon Adventures and not Lego Horizon, and not the way that you would call it like Lego Star Wars or Lego Harry Potter with no like extra little part of like a subtitle there, is telling. It looks like they were trying to do something else. There's only 4 playable characters. It's about like picking up different skills and weapons as opposed to changing gameplay styles. But for the most part, it is a game that I struggle to figure out who the audience is for this, because I guess it's maybe for kids, but even still, if it is, I'm not sure what part of it is going to grab them. It's extremely simplistic for adults, and it's very repetitive. It's a lot of just going through something very linear to getting to an open area, destroying all of the robot dinosaurs in there, and then moving through the next linear area until you get to the robot dinosaurs. There's some shortcuts, there's some hidden things, but just overall, like one of the craziest like 6 out of 10 games that I've played this year. I wonder why it exists, and I'm not a huge Horizon fan in the first place. I was like, this is my way to kind of get in the door.
Man, that's really disappointing. Because like it didn't get great reviews, so I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be like that great of a thing. But I did hope that it was one of those like, you know what? Maybe it's $20. I'll pick it up. But like hearing that, I kind of would rather wait until it's like free on PlayStation Plus.
Yep.
It sounds
I think $20 if you do it co-op on the couch may be worth it, because the split screen co-op is probably pretty solid. I could see it being a fun game to play with somebody else. But yeah, free on PlayStation Plus is the move, and I challenge you to beat the whole thing. I don't know if it'll hook you enough to get there.
Man, that's disappointing. Yeah. I wonder if it's more so like a concept for them to see, like, is this a way to make some money? Is, The Last of Us HD remaster Lego something that they'll put money behind because this does well? Is God of War Lego something they'll put their money behind? I wonder if that's part of it with the adventures too, of like, can this work? Maybe not, but we'll see. Okay. So that's what we've been playing, but all of us have also been playing a game, which is why we're here today. Dragon Age: The Veilguard. We have our full review today. We're going to dabble into spoilers at the end. We'll be very clear when we're getting into spoilers because our own Jerica hasn't hit credits yet. So what we don't want to do is spoil anything for her, because that would just be unkind. But we're still going to do our full review. We'll give it a number, I'm sure, and we're going to dive in right now. But as a general reminder, we will talk spoilers later. We will be clear when we get to that point, so don't be scared now. Jerica, Jake and I have been rambling on, so I want to start with you. How far in are you so far? Like, how many hours roughly? Where, general thoughts, vibes, overview of your time so far with Dragon Age: The Veilguard.
Yeah, I'm probably at least like about to touch 50 hours, so maybe a little over the halfway mark. Or not, depending if I keep doing all the quests and looting every single chest I see. So, but yeah, my first impressions are just like how I'm feeling at this moment. I haven't beat the game, so I can't like say like this is the score I give it right now. But based on what I've been playing and what I've been experiencing, a little backstory, like I played a little bit of Dragon Age Origins, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. It's been that long. And then Inquisition, I tried really hard because like I love Mass Effect. I played all of those. I played the trilogy, at least 4 full playthroughs, which I know some people can probably beat me on that, but I don't play
full as in all 3 games. Full?
Yeah, multiple, like back to back. Like I went through like immediately after I beat Mass Effect 3 for the very first time, I went back and played 1 through 3 again. So I don't do that often. So like huge Mass Effect fan. So of course I'm a big fan of BioWare. I've just never been on the like Dragon Age hype train as much. So like when Inquisition came out, I definitely tried it and I enjoyed it. But I guess y'all might have to help me here, but I'm trying to like, the gameplay is much different than what I'm playing in Veilguard. And I think it plays to me personally, like my taste, because I do like fast-paced action. I like to, hack and slash and get in there. But Inquisition, that might have been some of the things that were keeping me from continuing on, because I wasn't having as great of a time playing the game. Mm-hmm. And then the open world aspect of Inquisition was just a wreck in my eyes. Like it was just way too much space. And
it was really big.
I got lost a lot and couldn't really tell like what quests were important and how to get to the next big story beat. So I ended up like, I was like, I love this game. I love the story. I don't love playing it.
Sure.
So I ended up watching everything about Inquisition, all the cutscenes on YouTube. So, with that being said, going into Veilguard, like it is really fun to play. Yeah. I can go ahead and say like off the, from what I've enjoyed, and it keeps getting better and better as I'm like unlocking new skills. We'll get to the point where when we talk about like what type of book we're playing here in a second, but I love how they dialed down some of the, there's some open areas, but it's not open world. It's not massive. And I definitely picked up on some, I guess, the design of like God of War 2018 and like how they create semi-open areas with puzzles and treasure to find, places to explore. I picked up on that while playing Veilguard, and I was like, oh. And I feel like that's sort of new in a BioWare game.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. That was something new that I've never experienced before.
That didn't click for me until you just said that. Like, I didn't clock that these environments compared to Inquisition are so much smaller. And I think it serves the game because one of the big standouts for me is how each area you go into is like so well built. Very clear where you're supposed to go, all sorts of good things to find. And none of it for me ever felt overwhelming of like, there's so much here to sift through because they were all so like accurately built. But I hadn't really like thought about that until you said compared to Inquisition. That's a really good point. I think that's a really noticeable upgrade from Inquisition.
And even with Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem's a totally different type of game. And I still stand by like had some of the best flying jumpsuit javelin things. That was the best part of the game, and that was awesome. Maybe they'll put that in the next Mass Effect. But thing about Inquisition, like I just don't want them ever to do anything open world again. And I'm so thankful that this direction is what they took, because it just spoke to my soul what I need. But it also to my detriment, because like I'm exploring. I could tell it's definitely curated and meant like anywhere you go is meant for you to go and explore. So that's why I'm just exploring a lot. And if I'm like seeing a chest up high, like how do I get up there? I'm just constantly distracted by that kind of stuff, but it's fun. Like it is, I'm enjoying my time with it.
Hell yeah.
So those are just some of the things that came top of mind.
For sure. Jake, how about you? What are kind of your top of mind general impressions of the game as someone who did hit credits on stream, I believe?
Yeah. My whole playthrough is available where you find my full playthroughs, and it is such a good video game. I am over the moon about this thing, and it wasn't until they had a like 20-minute video maybe 2 months ago where they had like a lengthy hands-on where they basically just showed gameplay of like the first 20 minutes of the game that we all experienced. And I was interested. I've always given the Dragon Age series a try, but none of them have really clicked for me. I've never hit credits on any of the 3 prior games, but dabbled in them. I was like, okay, this is maybe my thing. And then after a certain amount of hours, I'm like, maybe it's not. But seeing the gameplay this time around, I was like, oh, I think this is going to be for me. I'm a big like Fable guy, and I am along with you guys on like the open world. I can get very overwhelmed very easily by an open world, especially if it's not extremely interesting. If there's not a ton of stuff, a lot of density and things to do, and just like this game, I think Jerica hit the nail on the head. Like it is so curated, and it is begging you to like run around that corner and see if there's something there, and there's something there every time. It's so satisfying. Like it is so, there's not been one. I have like these like 2 really annoying things on my stream. One of them is I'm always talking about how good my gamer's intuition is, where I'll say I say like, oh, if I go around to the left here, I know it wants me to go right, but if I go left here around that corner, I guarantee there's a chest back there. And I have just like not been wrong one time in this. And then I also have a button where I press plays every time I find a treasure chest or a treasure, I press this button and it plays Bruno Mars. It goes, treasure.
Amazing.
And in the first like 20 minutes of this game, I pressed it like 10 times. I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that every time anymore.
Yeah, you can't after a certain point. There was a point for me in the game where in the final mission, which I won't get into any specifics on, where because there's just always something around the corner, I had to be like, it was like 1 a.m. I'm like, I have to stop looking around the corner because I'm at a point where what's ever in the chest actually doesn't matter anymore. All of my gear is at the best it's going to be. I'm not going to all of a sudden change my weapon because of a chest I come across. I have to stop looking because, like you said, there was always something around the corner, and they were even doing it in the final mission. I'm like, guys, okay, stop. We need to stop for this part. But I'm glad to hear that you really loved the game, Jake, because Yeah, as for me, I loved basically every Dragon Age. I remember getting the first one or Origins. I guess that is the first one for Christmas, whatever year that was, and just devouring it because at that. Well, do either of you remember, was Dragon Age Origins before or after? I think it was after Mass Effect 1. Is that right, or is it before?
Yeah, I believe so.
There
I
you go.
want
I
to
was
say
like,
the
I have
Dragon
no
Age
idea.
Origins might be 2007.
Yeah, I feel like it was after Mass
Maybe.
Effect 1.
And I think it's
Okay.
2006 for Mass Effect 1. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can look it up. You keep talking.
But I feel like I remember having been obsessed with Mass Effect and like, oh, now I can do it, but with dragons, and devoured the original Dragon Age. Played the second one. Didn't love the second one as much as I liked the first one. But then Inquisition, which I've talked about before on the show, one of my favorite games of all time. Now, to Jerica's point, it took me a while. Like it took me like my fourth or fifth time getting like 10 hours into that game, because especially the beginning of the game is so overwhelming. Like it's so deeply overwhelming. But I feel like one of my good friends was like, I know that you are going to fuck so hard with this game. Just like, even if you're miserable, just go for another like 5 to 10 hours, which I typically don't like doing. But I was like, you know what? I will try this for you, because I love BioWare. I've loved other Dragon Age games. And then cut to 140 hours later, I can't stop playing. And I'm like depressed that I am now done with Dragon Age Inquisition. Because when I finally played through it, all of the DLC had come out, which was connective tissue to finally the Veilguard, which we're talking about today. And I was like, I can't get enough of this game. And so I had really high expectations going into the Veilguard. And by the time I hit credits, like 74-ish hours, so clearly my game of the year. Like I fucking love this game so much. Last time I talked about it on the show, which I think was with Maury, I was a bit torn on the combat. Like I think the combat's incredible in this game. And I've now, I think, solidified that opinion that like it is so fun to play. I already want to re-roll a new character and play. So I played as a rogue. I want to play as a mage now. But comparing it to Inquisition, I really liked that kind of more strategic, slowed down version of the combat in Inquisition, whereas this one is just so fast paced. There's still the strategy aspect of it, but I kind of miss that, being able to like stop the battlefield, look around Baldur's Gate 3 style and figure out, okay, what do I want Harding to do? What do I want Nev to do in this context? And that doesn't really, it's just not how it's built in this game. But I think the changes that they made for the Veilguard completely serve a 2024 video game. Like it's just so fun to play. It's so fluid. It's so clean. I played it on PC. I like never had a single stutter in this game.
That's awesome.
Like I couldn't believe how well this game ran. I do kind of wish that I'd played it on PlayStation now, and I might be a sicko and get this on PlayStation next time it's on sale to platinum it, because it's a very easy platinum. I'm one achievement away on Steam from platinuming the game just by beating it.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought. PlayStation.
It runs well on PC.
Runs well. Oh yeah, it runs well on PC. I don't remember where I was going with it, but the game's really fucking fun. And I already want to play it again. So we've danced a little bit around Rook, who you play as the protagonist in this game. Let's talk about our Rooks. What did we roll? What class were we? What race? What was our backstory?
I wish we would have taken pictures of them and put them all up. We should have replaced us with them.
Shoot, yeah, that is a great idea. Missed opportunity. Maybe we can post it.
Yeah, we'll send it your way.
Jerica, let's start with you. Tell us about your Rook.
I'm really bad with like the names of the cities in most games, especially if it goes like even messaging y'all today. I was like, I don't remember that god lady's name, but she's sort of a meanie. But my Rook, I have picked. I wanted to go with being a warrior because like I do like. I think that's one of the things like I love a lot about like Assassin's Creed, and like this is not exactly the same, but it does remind me a lot of like the gameplay and how you fight, and specifically Assassin's Creed Valhalla makes me think of that. And I love a sword and a shield. I didn't realize once I started playing that I was going to be able to toss my shield, which is really epic.
That's
like
cool.
Captain America, so that's pretty cool. And I picked for like their origin story, or like I guess city that they're connected to. is whatever Nev is a part of, and I always forget
Minrathous.
Mithrathis.
So you
and
were
then,
a shadow dragon?
yeah, Shadow Dragon. I don't know why I keep wanting to call them like the Pit Vipers. That makes no sense. Maybe that's another. Are they in the game? Is there someone called the Vipers in the game?
The Viper is part of the Shadow Dragons. That's where it is.
God, that's where it's coming from. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, he shows up with his cool outfit and stuff. Yeah, I remember that now. It's like coming back to me. Anyways, but that's the backstory for my Rook, the character creator. I spent like 3 hours in, and I went back and like changed things multiple times.
Were you human?
Elf.
Elf, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that part. An elf. Had a mullet.
Yes.
Recently, because it's been a while and it's taken me forever to play this game. The hair's grown out now, so I got this little hairstyle going now, a little pulled back. And then at one point I took a break, got a tattoo on my face because just want to embrace the elf culture.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
But yeah, I got like that kind of stuff going on in my head as I'm playing, and that's just part of like, I love being able to go back and change your appearance and make those kinds of adjustments instead of having to like replay it again with these changes, which most games have that now, where you can go to a mirror and change what you look like or whatever. But I think that's really cool that you get to do that in any game, and with BioWare, they sort of give you that option to.
Yeah, I love from the
have
jump
your head canon and whatever your character's actually going to do.
Like the amount of stuff that this game lets you, like with all of your armor and your weapons and your character, like they're like, whatever you want anything to look like, we give you the keys for all of that. I love that. Because
I think it's necessary for a game like this.
I agree. And I think it helps.
I did not want to put on like an ugly piece of armor and have to embrace it. I hate when that happens. So, because you look at your character a lot in BioWare games, so like I want to make sure they look cool.
Jake, how about you? Tell us about your Rook.
Yeah. So when I enter a character creator, I have 2 roads I am willing to go down. For a long time, when I was a kid, I would just always kind of make like Giga Jake, and it was like the most boring white man that's ever walked the video game planet. And now I choose: do I make an absolute freak of nature, or do I make a baddie?
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I made a baddie this time around, because the character model for the created characters is insane. Like, I think I made like the prettiest person that's ever been in the video game. Her name was Lily, and she had red hair and freckles, and really just like, I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get like the character creator tuned exactly right, and then you load into the game and you're like, "Oh, their nose" or something like that. You're like, "What have I done?" And one take, Timmy. This thing was perfect right off the jump. I am very simple. I want sword, and I want to just bonk people on the head. So I went with the warrior class, and I started to spec into Reaper. I was like, "Oh, this is the thing for me." And as I got
Which one was Reaper?
Reaper is like large scythe, lots of like green damage. I forgot exactly what it's called.
Necrosis.
Yeah. I did get to Necrosis, and once I got there, I was kind of exploring the options. And I found myself being like, "Oh, I kind of missed that like other spell that I had." So I did at one point in the game respec, and instead of going Reaper, I ended up going Champion, and I was pretty pleasantly surprised. Like, it didn't change much as far as like my like gameplay style or anything like that, but it leaned further into what I found to be the most satisfying part of playing as a warrior, which was that shield throw. Oh my god. I will probably dig further into the combat, but bonking people with this shield from 30 feet away, and then the shield ricocheting back to you, and then you using your heavy attack to smash that shield back at that person to do even more damage is got to be like one of the most satisfying things in video games this year or ever. Unbelievable.
You guys are really making me want to try a warrior class instead of a mage class based on how cool this shield sounds with my second play.
Yeah.
Because that sounds really fucking cool. Did you say what race you were?
Human, and I went Lords of Fortune. I didn't have much allegiance to any of those, nor did it really affect my decisions in the game. Sure. But that's the route that I went. Honestly, she kind of just looked best in that armor.
Sure. So I was like, you know what? I think captured a thing or two throughout this game. So I am going to show y'all my rook because I did find
Oh, nice.
one real
yes,
fast.
let's go.
Let's see. I guess share screen window. Here we go. So this I was a rogue. This is like a little bit of dialogue at one point in the game. This is her name was Petra, or their name was Petra. I made my character non-binary because I was like, you know what? I've not seen that as a choice before in a game, so I want to see what that does. Which I'm glad that I did, because actually the part that I just showed you was me capturing a conversation that I have with Lucanus, talking about like identity, which this game covers super well in multiple scenarios, which we can talk about. But I was an elf from the Veil Jumpers. That was like my group that I came from. And I spec'd the first like half of the game. I spec'd into the duelist subclass, which is like very, because with the rogue, you're playing with 2 swords. It's very necrosis heavy. It's very trying to slowly get people's health down with that kind of effect or whatever. But I found I really enjoyed the archer combat of this game. Shockingly so. Like, I feel like archery in a game is normally something that I just don't care about. Like, even in Dragon's Dogma, in the class where you could play like as an archer, part of it was fun, but I just finally was like, I would rather be the other kind of rogue where you can just jump around and teleport or whatever. And so I also respect, like you did, Jake, and changed it from that, which is like the duelist is like the Antivan Crow part of the rogue, into the Veil Ranger, I think they call it, which is much more bow focused. And from that point on, I was like, this is like my favorite combat system maybe ever. Like the way how good the bow feels in this game in combat. And like there's this one animation for a move specifically where Rook like does like a 360 jump and it like slows down, and or they shoot the bow, which causes, it's like a primer for someone to then detonate their power on it. It was like always just so satisfying every single time I could do that. But I totally love how much customization they let you do with Rook, whether it's identity, whether it's just like you were saying, Jake, like there's so much cool stuff that you can do just visually with the character. Like I also embraced the Arlathan culture, had a tattoo on my face. It was, yeah, I fell in love with Rook. So that's going to be a hard part doing another playthrough, because I'm going to have a whole new Rook because this Rook story is complete. So now I need, a new Rook. So we talked a little bit about our Rooks. What about companions? So, we spend the whole game with 2 folks coming along with us, and there's, I think, 7 or 8 that you get throughout the game. Tell me about, standout companions. Did you have a go-to set that you always went throughout? Did you, mix it up a little? Jake, what was your kind of companion journey in the Veilguard?
Yeah, I was surprised at how much I liked each one of these characters. And it was, I think, let me come clean on my Dragon Age the Veilguard playthrough real quick as well. I beat this game in 24 hours. I basically played this game the wrong way. Being like a variety streamer, I play a little of a lot and a lot of a little. And I sometimes do this thing, especially in games like this, that even though I'm enjoying them, I'll kind of like preserve some of the game. I did it with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth this year as well, where I'm like, let me launch through this thing and get to the ending, get through it unspoiled, enter the zeitgeist, have the conversations, and then when I go back and play through a second time, which I inevitably will do for a game that I like this much, I'll have some things to experience for the first time. I can do this side quest that I never did before, or play it with this character by my side as opposed to another way. So I was kind of not only just sticking to the golden path, but really like putting all my chips in on like a certain set. So I spent my time with Nev and Harding were my 2 people that I was rolling with pretty much the entire game.
Cool.
Really, really solid group.
Yeah. Nev was always in my bunch too. I ended up going Nev and Tosh almost, not the whole game. Like I tried to mix it up from time to time so that I could, because whenever you complete quests and stuff, like their relationship grows a little bit. So like I kind of wanted to spread that out, because also like, certain decisions, some people kind of lose some love for you, like those kinds of things. So it's like I want to try to spread the love, but once I got to a point where everyone was close to like that status of like, okay, I've basically done everything, I just mainlined it with Nev and Tosh. Because also being a rogue, like I really liked the character of Lucanus, but it was just a bit too samey, because especially the first half of the game, I was basically his build. So it's like, okay, I want Nev because I don't have anyone that does cold, because I can't do cold. And I'll also, slightly treading into our next topic, Tosh is also who I romanced. So I was like, I gotta take Tosh with me. Like we're going on every battle that we can together because we're in love, you see. So those were the two that I mostly played with. But yeah, I agree with you, Jake. Like there wasn't really, if I had to pick one that didn't vibe with me that much, it's Davrin. I liked him. I loved Asan, his Griffin, but I found myself only ever taking Davrin for the most part when I had to. Something about the character just didn't quite click for me the way that basically everybody else did. Eventually, like Emmerich, I was cold on at first, but then grew to love him so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, Davrin was the one that, like, even by the end, I was kind of not. I could have gone without Davrin, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But Jerica, what about you? How are you feeling about at your point in the game, the companions so far?
Individually, like super interesting. And one thing though, I do feel like that's missing, that I feel like I should have felt this at this point. Maybe it's coming, not really a critique, but just something that I feel like there's something here that's missing. I don't know, like when I was, and I'm comparing this to Mass Effect, because that's the last
I think is fair.
big
As one does.
Bioware games that I was obsessed with, not counting Andromeda. It was fine, but thinking about the original trilogy, because I know they can do this again or make it better. Like I know at times, like the companion, like one of my favorite things about Bioware games, and like the last ones I've played have been like banter between characters. Like I like to pick certain characters based on what they're going through, so I can hear, and especially if I know this character might have something different to say, I want to hear what they're going to talk about together. And I feel like in this game, like the banter is really good. So far, my favorite banter I've experienced has been Balara and Nev talking about like I guess she's reading these serials, which is like little newspaper, like I guess like
Stories,
serial stories, like small stories, and they always end on a cliffhanger. So she wants a new one. And I thought that was so great. Maybe I haven't had enough time and I just need to take some different folks with me, just walking around and looking for chests more so I can hear some dialogue. All that to say, like, I feel like the team itself didn't get enough time to grow together. So it still feels like all of a sudden they're just in the kitchen cooking, but I'm like, man, you just joined our team like 2 days ago. It'd been nice to have like, I don't know, like onboarding quests or more cutscenes where a new character is being introduced to the group versus just Rook talking, making sure Emrich's cozy with Manfred in his room, right? Like I want to see the end. Like you get one-off comments from like different companions, and maybe y'all have something to add, then I just haven't got there or I missed. But I feel like the team as a whole, some of the off banter they might have in the kitchen just sort of seems out of place for me, because I feel like y'all just met, or I don't know why y'all. I don't know. Like I don't know what it is that's missing. I
see what you're saying.
There's something there with like the group dynamic.
I partially agree. I think you playing it more, I think you'll turn around a little bit on it, but I don't think you'll fully take a 180, because like when you're in the lighthouse, which is like your home base in the Fade, which is so cool, by the way. This like floating area in
it's
limbo.
Awesome.
It's so fucking cool. But there are these times like you're walking around, and it might be one that like triggers an entire cutscene, or it might be where it's just like Davrin and Harding are just like standing on a balcony looking at each other. So like, okay, if I get close enough, they're going to start talking. Those ones specifically never worked for me. Those always felt really strange. Like, and it was so clear that it was like, it never felt like I was walking in on a conversation. It felt like, okay, I am now starting your guys' conversation by walking close enough. That was one of the few times where I felt like, okay, this is really kind of breaking the immersion for me. But I feel like out in the world, by switching it up a lot, taking out Tosh and Emmerich, and hearing like Tosh really doesn't like magic, and like Emmerich is kind of, it's specifically like necromancy, and like hearing them kind of banter about like theory of the dead, and like there's a lot of things like that where I found sometimes certain companions didn't really work together. It was like, I don't think you guys are having very much interesting discussion, but other times I was like, I don't want to go into this quest beat because I want to just hear you guys talking about random bullshit because it's so interesting to me. So I think that you might kind of enjoy it a little bit more, but I do think that there are missing those, like, we're in a cinematic together, having banter as a team. There's one thing that I bet you haven't got to yet where, and I won't spoil it, but there's like a side quest that once you kind of get to a point in the side quest, you can trigger like a bunch of scenes in a row with the group together around the table. And they're like kind of talking about things that you've uncovered on this side quest. And those I thought were some of the best moments of like the team being together, because everyone's bouncing off of each other and they're all like chiming in on what they think.
I think I know what you're talking about. Is it like the wolf statues? And
the wolf statue bit.
I'm going to tell you this. I think that needs to be it. I think I discovered and started doing those at the wrong time because I just did it back to back to back. And it really threw me off. I'm like, man, we're just hanging out in this room all of a sudden. This is real strange.
I see, and I'm like, exactly
y'all don't
know
each other
now.
like this to argue, right? And be upset about something. So maybe that's something for anyone listening. Like, once you get that, sorry if I didn't spoil anything.
No. You're fine.
You're learning history as a group. And I just think I made them. I don't know. It just was a thing I could discover that I've started doing. And then I was like, cool. Oh, I have a few of these. And I was like, took me out of it doing them back to back.
Yeah, that
maybe
makes sense.
I needed to do more side quests for these companions. I needed to get to know them a little bit better. It's like I feel like I just got Tosh on and just hearing Tosh talk about these concepts. I was like, man, we don't know you yet. Like, what are you talking about?
Fair. That's totally fair.
I
also did them back to back, but the team had been assembled for like 15 hours by that point. So it made more sense for it to all. But if you had just added Tosh, I totally see what you mean. Of like, what a weird, all of a sudden everyone is so ingratiated.
I think, so that's like a little thing that maybe, I got to revisit, and they do that at different times. So, but that's not my fault as a player, BioWare.
No, it's not.
Right.
So, but I think overall, like, the banter has been really good. I just want, and we'll get to, I'm trying to romance. I'm taking both the ladies, Nev and Balara, with me everywhere. I need to stop. I need to stop trying to, like, because they're probably going to get mad about that. I don't know. Because I don't know who I'm going to pick yet. I'm sort of leaning towards Nev. I love she's like a detective. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I need to mix and match a little bit more so I can get some of that background and see them interact. So also, good note for anyone that's playing through, swap out your companions on some side quests, not the main stuff. Bring the people that you really want with you. But like all these side quests that I'm doing, I just need to start mix and matching more.
For sure. Jake, do you know what we're talking about with the wolf statue thing, or did that you really only did the main quest?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's so much shit that you missed. That's so good in this game.
For sure.
Yeah.
I did, the only side quests that I did were companion quests for the one person that I decided to romance.
Which was?
Took the road less traveled. I went with Harding.
Hell yeah.
I'm sort of tempted though. Very, just so sweet.
Big recommendation. Absolutely fantastic. I have zero regrets on my choice. Okay, I was at first I was like, I wanted everybody. I was playing the field out there. And also there's no wrong answers in this game. Everybody seemed like a pretty valid choice. Like I was down for whoever charmed me the most.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what, Harding? I'm going in that direction. Really, really cool.
Yeah, that's great. This might be a slight spoiler for Tosh specifically, because that's who I romance. But if neither of you, well, Jake, you're done. But are you considering romancing Tosh at all?
I've started a few quests, and I I'm sort of seeing where that could lead, and I'm very intrigued. So you're not spoiling me too hard.
Sure, I won't go like to the end game of her companion quest, but you find out slowly throughout the game that Tosh is also struggling with their identity, and you find out that Tosh is non-binary. And so as my rook being non-binary is like, oh, this I'm sure there's going to be some really interesting dialogue that I've never seen in a AAA game before, which this game I think does such a good job of like bringing like all of the fucking grifters that are talking shit about this game. I wish they would just play it because like it's really good.
Yeah.
Like the diversity in this game I think is so like such a breath of fresh air, and seeing like I kept having these moments of like my rook is non-binary, Tosh is non-binary, I bring a Nev along, like what a cool thing that in a fucking $200 million game probably my main trio is 2 non-binary people and a woman. Like that I just thought that was really cool. But like the quest with Tosh being a non-binary rook, like there's a lot of really good shit in there. And like Tosh's relationship with their mother is like, I recommend on a second playthrough perhaps, or watching like a YouTube bit go down Tosh's romance, because there's some really good shit in that romance quest. Let's dip our toes in spoilers, and then we are running a little long, so we'll do like a couple mid like spoilers that Jerica would also be a part of, and then we'll say goodbye to Jerica so Jake and I can just rip the Band-Aid off. But the main thing that I want to know in terms of some slight story spoilers, this is maybe like a third of the way through the game, so like if you aren't that far in and you haven't gotten to like the first very clear, very big decision that you make as rook that completely changes one thing versus the other, that's the one we're going to talk about. So quick spoiler warning for that. The very first very big choice is a dragon is coming to invade, or there's 2 dragons. One is invading Minrathous, one is invading Treviso, the 2 kind of main cities toward the beginning of the game. And you have to choose between, are you going to go fight Minrathous or fight for Minrathous, or are you going to go fight for Treviso? I really want to hear which ones y'all picked. And I hope that at least one of us picked something different so we can kind of talk about what that meant. Jerica, which one did you go for? Which one did you save?
Well, because of my rook's backstory and, you know, trying to hook up with Nev, we just went and saved our hometown. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense. Being a Shadow Dragon, that makes sense to you that you would have saved Minrathous. Jake, how about you? Which one did you save?
I also helped Minrathous. I feel like the game kind of, and I felt like when you said I hope one of us did it, I was like, I bet we didn't, because I feel like the game
kind of
told me that like. Yeah, they were like, okay, Treviso is a little bit better set up for this situation, and the stakes are higher in Minrathous. Go do what you want. And I was like, well, it sounds like I should probably just go for Minrathous. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted, because at that point I was really macking on Lucanus because I hadn't met Tosh yet. And I was thinking I would go down the Lucanus route. But then like what you said, Jake, it was like the way that the information is presented, I really felt like, because the Venatori, they're like, the Venatori are probably going to take over Minrathous. Like, well, that sounds really bad, because they're like how important Minrathous is. Like, okay, I'm going to go save Minrathous. And then, which was really disappointing for me, because my favorite place to go in the first chunk of the game was Treviso. So beautiful to go to Treviso. It's very like Venetian. The colors are so fucking pretty throughout everywhere in Treviso. It's like on the water, and it's like dusk 24/7. It's just so nice. But if you don't go there, then it's like completely overrun by the blight, and it's like becomes this really ugly place. And it's like, so I was hoping that one of us saved Treviso so we could like see what, because I was curious to see like what does a Minrathous look like that was taken by the dragon. But we all saved Minrathous, so I guess we'll have to check in on a second playthrough on that one.
Yeah, reconvene.
Yeah, I did like though to continue the slight spoilery discussion. I did like that based on what one you chose, the kind of champion of that area, whether it's Lucanus or Nev, that relationship is kind of strained from that point on. I thought that was a really interesting thing. In fact, I kind of wish that we had seen more of that than that decision. Like maybe it would have been cool if there was like a little bit more like headbutting of companions. And I also wish so what I'm kind of saying is, by all of us not saving Treviso, we could no longer romance Lucanus, and he doesn't trust you for a while. He leaves for a while. Like he doesn't show up on quests. You can't use him. But I was kind of disappointed that didn't then mean that Nev was like my biggest fan. Like I would have expected there to be like a Nev is like all of a sudden you have like such a strong bond with Nev. It was just like business as usual with Nev, and Lucanus kind of fucking hates your guts for a minute. And I wish that there had been a bit of a more of a trade-off on the positive side.
For
than there
sure, like
was
a
on the
payoff to like,
yeah,
you know, aligning with one of like somebody else for sure.
yeah. Especially if it's like with Jerica, like if you end up romancing Nev, I would hope that at some point that comes up. Like
It brings, bring it up.
I would hope
made
so.
some sacrifices here because Lucanus was also, very interesting, good-looking character.
Yeah,
You know
so
what I'm
good
saying?
looking. I mean, most people in this game are so.
I mean,
good
yeah,
looking.
we
Yeah,
should
for
say
sure.
everyone's very beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, I overall I did really like that pretty early on. They're like, all right, you're going right or you're going left. Pick one. Because that's BioWare is just so good at that, of like a world sweeping choice that will completely affect something for the rest of the game. And I understand why there's kind of really only one of those choices for the most part, like, because the permutations and all of the work I'm sure that makes for a developer, but it would have been cool to see like one or two more.
I agree. I'm sort of sad there's not more. Dang.
Yeah, I mean, there are still big decisions, especially I'm
Definitely.
sure you'll expect
Okay.
it's a BioWare game, so the final mission is going to be choices galore. But it's like
Okay.
I wish that there had been
Like
another
world-changing decisions like that really
Yeah.
affect like a good chunk, like a half of your sort of
Yeah, there isn't
companion,
really like there's some stuff that can really affect like the end game, and they can really affect certain things, but those
Okay.
more are in line with like your companion quests and your faction
Okay.
quests. There's one that like there's one I'm thinking of specifically that I won't mention, that it's like if you don't do that, it can really change the end.
Is this a
But
situation, Mass Effect 3, leveling up your something, having a perfect ending, like doing all these things? That's why I'm like trained now. I'm like, I'm gonna do every side quest because I don't want anybody to die
well,
without spoiling me.
without spoiling you, it is very important to get every one of your characters to Veilguard status, which is essentially their way of like you've
Okay.
maxed out their relationship.
All right.
And that like unlocks like a special power, which I never noticed a difference on, which is also kind of disappointing. But
Yeah.
I'm sure once you balance Jerica, I can't wait to hear
Okay.
how Jake's game went,
All right.
because it sounds like he didn't get to Veilguard status with anyone but Harding. So I'm sure that had major implications. But I think this is probably a good stopping point to kind of jump into final spoilers. So before you run, Jerica, any final thoughts? Do you feel comfortable giving it a score based on what you've played? Whatever you want to lead
I'm
with.
sitting pretty at an 8 for Dragon Age Veilguard right now. I think it's a solid 8 right now in my book.
Hell yeah. I love it.
I'm so glad BioWare is back, and they're not afraid to go back to the drawing board and try new things, but try new smart things. I just wish it didn't take them 10 years to do this.
Sure.
Or however long it did.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope Mass Effect doesn't do that.
Me too. Well, Jerica, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your spoiler-free thoughts. Well, a few spoilers, but I'm sure we'll have you back on here in the very near future to talk more about games. But thanks for coming on. At Jericachu, if you want to follow Jerica. Anything else you want to plug before you run?
That's it. Just find me there.
Hell yeah.
I'm doing nothing else this week other than playing this game. So
what a life.
Hell yeah.
I know. And eating turkey, I guess, at some point. All right,
sure.
Bye.
Bye, Jerica.
Bye, Jerica.
All right. Full spoilers. We're ripping off the Band-Aid. Spoilers are on. So first of all, Jake, let me change this real fast. It's going to drive me nuts. Only doing the main quest. Did everybody die for you?
Everybody died, including Rook.
No way!
It's wild. I refer to it as the worst ending I've ever had in any video game, and it's completely my fault.
Everybody died?
Every single person died, including me.
Oh my
wild.
God,
and the
what a
screen
bummer.
cut to black, and they had like a little message, and it was like because you didn't do a bunch of stuff, your entire party, including Rook, perished that day. Like a heavy toll. It was wild, dude.
That's so funny. And so
Yeah.
if I guess at the very least, if Rook survives, there's like an epilogue of like the whole Varric, like, and so the way that this all turned out is that this happened and that happened. And you didn't get that. It seems.
No. There was nothing additional. My ending was like 40 seconds. It's crazy
Oh my God.
how punishing it is. Yeah.
That is wild.
Wild.
So yeah.
It did.
Go ahead.
It did have some like ups and downs. Like it wasn't like I just went in and auto failed everything. Like I did make some good decisions in like let's just call it like the suicide mission, because that's what it's like modeled after Mass Effect 2's suicide mission. I did make some good decisions, and some people lasted longer than others, and I was able to redistribute and like make those decisions. So for like a while, I was like, listen, I know this is gonna go poorly. Like I am just throwing Emmerich out there and hoping that he can cast this spell. And like Emmerich did it, and like Emmerich almost made it to the end. He was the only person that made it besides my party, and he got bodied right there at the very last thing.
Did your Emmerich, or did you get to a part where you could choose whether he becomes a lich or not, or did you not even get that far? So I was curious so with Emmerich, his companion quest, his whole like dream is he wants to become a lich, which makes him immortal. So I was curious if you make him a lich, can he still die?
Right.
I don't know. Because I didn't make him
the
a
last one standing.
Yeah. Because there's a reason I didn't want to make him a lich, which I won't spoil for you because I think it's worth.
No. Feel free. I am not. I have the worst memory in the world. So by the time I'm back in here doing it again,
so Emmerich's companion quest ended up being my favorite.
Really?
Because you grow really close with Manfred, his fucking skeleton guy.
Awesome.
And you end up having his companion quest. You're going down and you're like hunting like an old colleague of his that's become a lich and is trying to like end the world essentially. And you learn that he really wants to become a lich too. And he then is you go into this big fight to kill her. I forget her name, but in that fight, Manfred dies. And then you're given a choice to convince Emmerich to bring Manfred back and forego ever being able to become a lich, or you can let him become a lich and Manfred doesn't get to come back. And I was like, I'm bringing Manfred back. I would die for Manfred.
That's awesome.
So I brought
those are
back
high
Manfred.
Stakes for a companion quest.
Right. And then Emmerich was like, you made the right choice. I bet he says that in both instances, but so then he doesn't get to become a lich. So he was mortal from then on, but he didn't die for me. The only person that died for me was Harding, which was very sad. So in that first choice you make in the final mission, it's have someone help with like a barrier, like a magic barrier between Lara and Nev, and it's and someone goes scout, either Davarin or Harding. I chose Harding. And to my understanding, whoever you choose for that dies. Like that person will die regardless. But it is possible to have everyone else live, which thankfully for me, that did happen. And I think it's because I did literally every quest that you could possibly do.
Okay, so Harding at that point, I'm terrified because Harding is the person that I romanced in the game, and we went all the way. And I brought her, so like by my side the entire time. So every time there was an option to send somebody, I was like, well, I'm not sending her. So I sent Davarin. And then the most heartbreaking part of the entire game, because Davarin's the first one to go. Davarin falls in this like, it's like a lava pit or something like a lava blight pit. Nightmare blight, something like that. And I'm like, Davarin, I didn't want to talk about this too much when Jerica was on, but Davarin, when you were talking about Davarin being maybe the most like underdeveloped character, I feel like he was kind of sharing his role with Hassan, and that's probably why he was underdeveloped. Like it's so easy to be attached to the cute little animal of the crew, similar to Manfred. Like Manfred is just like he's just a little guy, but Davarin falls in this thing, and I'm like, okay, so what happens now? And then Hassan lets out this fucking screech and then just follows him in there. And I was like, no. Like,
man, I'll be honest. On my second playthrough, I think I might have to sacrifice Harding again. I can't see Hassan die.
Dude, it was a tough watch.
That sounds really painful. So so who was there with you at the very end before everyone died?
So at the very end, there's a situation where the only people standing is like you're trying to rescue somebody who is like trapped by the blight, and that was Nev.
Yeah. Okay. For me, it was Laura.
Okay, interesting. I was wondering if those seemed so customized to Nev. Like I was wondering if it always had to be Nev because so much happens to her.
The Balara one was really interesting because of her being an elf and the gods being elves. They were like with her being like because Nev probably talked about how like I felt like I was in their head and I could like hear their thoughts or whatever. Hearing it from Bilar's perspective, like I was in the head of a god, like of an elven god. Like there was, I feel like some kind of nuance with the Bilara side of it. But that's one that I do really want to see. I want to see what it looked like with Nev on my next playthrough, because
So did
cool.
Bilara come back with like all darkened eyes in the whole 9 yards?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, I guess they got that for every single character, which is wild.
If I'm assuming, so actually I'm curious with you for Nev, when she comes back with the red eyes, did she then get like consumed by the blight for you toward the end, where like
yes,
so if Bilara like can overcome that essentially, I think it's probably if you get to Veilguard status. I'm
got it. So at that point, my last battle was Harding and Nev, and they both bit the dust right before I did. And the way that I went out was kind of rad, because I guess like skipping like to the end and like final moments of mine, you open up that tear, and I'm assuming you 300 kicked Solus into it, or something along those lines.
So for me, there was a thing I kind of mentioned toward the end there, where there is a side quest that if you do that, you can have, there's a third option at the end. So the options with Solus are, what I assume is you fought him, I guess. So you can fight him, you can not fight him, or and the not fighting him is you trick him. So there's this, did you have like in your game, was there like a trick dagger that you had?
The fake dagger.
So with the fake dagger, if I think you have to have certain alignment with your people, where the trick dagger with Solus, you can give it to him, and the internet tells me that that's the neutral ending, where he like sacrifices himself to hold the veils together. But it's like I forget like what makes it neutral compared to good. So with the good ending, you kill Algernon, and Solus is saved by Bilara in my playthrough, and then Solus is like, I'm here to betray you. The knife, I have to still open up the veil or whatever, and everyone's gonna die, but it's the right thing to do. If you get to this other side quest, that other god from the past, Mythal, I don't know if you heard about Mythal at all. Mythal was like Solus's best friend or whatever. Those the wolf statues that Jerica and I were talking about, you find out a lot about Mythal there. And then once you get all those, you can go find Mythal in the world. And and then there's two options. You can either fight a dragon version of Mythal, or you can just convince Mythal to like give you her essence, which I didn't realize you could convince Mythal. So I fought the dragon version. And then I realized when I hit credits, like, oh, if I just have the conversation differently, I could get it. So because I saved the game like 94 times, I found like the exact moment essentially. So I was very lucky on that. But if you get this essence at the end, there's a third option with Solus, because you now have like the power of Mythal too, because you also find out, Jake, that Morrigan is also Mythal. She's like a version of Mythal. She's like, Mythal's spirit was broken into like 1,000 pieces or whatever, and there's a piece of it that lives within Morrigan. And so this other piece that you get from the side quest, Morrigan like absorbs it, and the Inquisitor comes out, and Morrigan comes out, and you survive that fight, or you don't fight Solus, and you all convince him like what you want to do. You want to do it because of regret, and you want to honor Mythal and all these things, but like, I'm Mythal Morrigan, and I want to release you from this regret. And like, the best thing to do is to just sacrifice yourself and pay for your mistakes by letting the people live, and you hold the veil together. So it's like a variant of the neutral ending, but the difference is that like Mythal is involved, the Inquisitor is involved, which I loved. In fact, really cool. I wish the Inquisitor was in it more. She's in it a good bit, or I think you can also make the Inquisitor a man, but I played as a woman back in the day, so I made mine a woman. But and like there's like a little banter from like, because at the end of Inquisition, in that extra bit, the extra DLC, is when you find out that Solus is the Dreadwolf, and you try to convince him like, don't do this, and he doesn't listen to you. And so like the Inquisitor and Solus get to have a moment of like, you didn't listen to me that first time, and like it was so lovely. Like it was such a great ending, I thought. like taking the time to talk to everybody and get
that's really awesome.
Really, really cool. So definitely, like, whenever you do play it again, highly recommend doing all those
I will
things.
definitely go to the 9s. The way that mine ended up wrapping up was like I got my ass booted through the through the rift in time over there.
So crazy to me.
And then it is still like, I think all paths lead to some kind of, I guess, not reconciliation, but there is like a pretty firm thing. I kind of like come back out and I grab Solus and pull him in with me. So instead of booting him out, I go down with the ship and I grab him, pull him into the rift, which is pretty rad.
That is really rad. There's also a post-credit scene if you do everything too. Do you want to hear about the post-credit scene?
Very much so.
So did you ever come across in any of the few side quests that you did, there's 3 of them, and it's like this little orb that you come across that it talks to you very briefly. And do you play with subtitles on when you play?
Yeah.
The character name is just question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. I did at one point. I think maybe in the like Alluvian forest or something like that.
Sure.
I want to say.
I think there's 3 of them, and if you come across all 3 of them, and the way that you do that is by doing all the side quests. Like you'll stumble into them at some point by doing all the side quests. There is so Varric, or actually it might not have been Varric, it might have been Morgan, because there's something else we didn't talk about. Varric is dead and was the whole time.
We gotta get
which
to
we gotta
talk
about.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if the epilogue is Varric or Morgan. It might have been Morgan. But after that, the credits roll, and then that little fucking question mark guy comes back, and it's another one of those like moving picture cinematics, and it's really cool, which I love. Like normally I'm like, come on, put a little bit of money into some cinematics, but I love the style of those cinematics.
There were so many of them that I didn't mind. I was so surprised how often they like popped up. I was like, I get that you couldn't go crazy with those,
and
I'm glad to have quantity.
They did a really good job with the ones that they did. But essentially this like question mark guy, I still don't know who he is, but it kind of suggests that there is this like larger force that has been behind everything, like an Illuminati situation. And it shows some like little pieces of art from Origins. It shows some stuff from Dragon Age 2. Mostly it shows stuff from Inquisition and the Veilguard, but it kind of suggests that like they've already said they're not doing DLC for this game, but I think it leaves the door open for whatever the next Dragon Age is. Now that, the Solus arc is complete,
right?
It's their way of saying like, hey, there can be more here. There can be a bigger story still, which I love. Like there's always a bigger thing, right? It's just how you tackle that. Like Horizon, I thought tackled there's a bigger thing in a terrible way of like, this feels silly to me, but this felt like, because they kind of drip fed it throughout the game of like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm excited to see where that kind of goes from here.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But Varric, did you ever see that coming?
No. And it's so, I'm glad I didn't see it coming, because if I suspected it a little bit at all, I would have been like, oh, it's tropey and dumb. I can't believe they did this. But honestly, it worked for me. What about you? Did you see it?
So I didn't. I started to see it, I think, when they wanted me to start to see it, and it wasn't like the reveal part, but like like a little bit before that, maybe like 15 or 20 minutes before that, I started to be like, oh, there's something happening with Varric, and I can't quite put my finger on it. For a minute, I thought maybe they were trying to say that. I thought they were doing like I shouldn't spoil a different game. I thought they were doing a thing where like Varric has been Solus the whole time.
Oh, sure.
And at first I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. But then once you realize that, no, he's been dead, and Solus like put a little spell on you so that you would just think that he was still alive. I didn't see that coming for sure. But I also like, it makes sense that he never left bed. Like but like, I feel like normally I think of like a Fight Club, or I think of like a movie or a game where there's that reveal of like something has been, the Sixth Sense, something has been different the whole time.
For sure.
And then they do that thing of like, flash, here's a scene, flash, here's a scene, flash, here's a scene. And the whole time it was right in front of your face, but you didn't see it coming. I feel like that was one of the few things about this narrative that actually didn't hit for me, where like, not to say that I didn't like the choice, and not to say that I think it like didn't work for me at all, but I was kind of like, I don't know. I feel like there wasn't enough evidence to support this twist. It kind of felt like it was very purposefully held from me, as opposed to like dangled in front of my face like a stupid audience member, like it normally works. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wondered, because you spent so much more time in the game and interacting with people, I wondered if there was more threads dangling with Varric and things like that, because what it really for me, I think I was so hard on Varric, like when I think back to it, because the whole time I was like, in our very first thing, Nev got injured for you, right? Because
for me, I had Nev get injured instead of Harding, because I took Harding with me and had Nev defend the thing or whatever.
Okay, so yes, same thing here. So Nev recovered, and I remember being like super hard on Varric and being like, Varric, Nev was all fucked up this entire time. She's already been on bed rest and she's good and she's traveling with me. When are you going to get up on your ass, off your ass, and join the party? I thought for sure he was going to be like the 4th or 5th party member that was playable.
Yeah,
and then throughout the whole thing, I was like, is this guy never joining me? What's the deal? And by the time I was like, in the long run, I feel like his presence was like fewer and further between. I didn't interact with him much in that second half of the game until the very end, basically, in those last couple hours.
I can't help but wonder if there's an outline of the story where the Varric reveal happens earlier, but like it would have had to have been after the last time you speak to Solus in the Fade, right? Like it couldn't have been before that, which the last time you do that is pretty late in the game. So like, but yeah, I don't know. I felt like it would have been nice if, and like I thought through it and I was like, I don't think this ever happened, where like that with that choice, with the Nev or Harding choice at the beginning of the game, it would have been nice if there was some sort of like remorse they had, or like some moment toward the beginning that with another lens is like, oh, they're actually sad about Varric being dead. They're not sad about the whole situation. But I felt like Varric was never, ever really mentioned again. And like, for those scenes that Jerica and I talked about, were like, it's the whole group around the table. Like Varric is there and he chimes in, and like, sure, he doesn't ever respond to anybody directly, or rather no one ever responds to him. But I feel like there's just so many people talking that's not a clear, like that's an easy thing to get away with. And I don't know, I guess for a game where so much was so expertly done on the narrative side of like so many things weaving together so perfectly, I guess more so I'm just surprised that there wasn't like a, oh fuck, of course he was dead. Instead it was like oh, he's dead, which I think is like a small difference, but I think one that would have really been made this like, oh my god, what a fucking twist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. But I get that for sure.
Yeah.
I think with my like lower time investment, it probably worked a little bit better for me. I'm very interested. I think the recontextualization of that is very cool, and also does pull me into like, hey, replay this and look at it a little bit differently. For sure. Will be an interesting second playthrough.
And maybe I'll have my foot in my mouth on a second playthrough. Like, oh, there's been like 5 or 6 things where like it's very clear, but I feel like there wasn't, but we'll see. One other thing that I wanted to mention, and then we should go, is, and you know, any other final thoughts you have. The only other thing that I think kind of disappointed me in this game was the dragon battles. And that might be because you probably didn't do nearly as many as me. I think I ended up doing like 9 or 10 by the end of the game.
Oh my God.
They are all the exact same. Not a single one is different than one prior. The only one that's a little different is the one at Weishaupt where you're fighting 2 at a time. Like that's like one of the main story quests.
That one I hit.
But like every single, it's like the same charging attack, the same like fly up in the air, and whatever element they have throwing that at you. The same like I'm gonna perch on the thing and like shoot. I would have been, I think, interesting, and would have felt different if at some point a dragon behaved a little differently. Because it was very fun to fight a dragon, I thought. And like the Mythal one specifically was so difficult. Like that was, I think one of those, like, it might've been my level, but it kind of felt like Valkyrie adjacent of like, you got to really have your shit together to fight the Mythal dragon. But past that, I felt like the dragons all just were weirdly similar. And that was surprising to me. Did you feel that at all?
Didn't stick out at all because I only fought 3 instances of, I think, dragon battles, and one of them was that double one. But I do remember that double dragon fight was a big difficulty spike for me.
Yeah.
I am very bad at video games, but I got throttled there like 3 or 4 times and had to restart. And then I ended up just like turning on no dying mode.
Sure, sure.
It just got through and then turned it off again after. But
yeah,
no, didn't stick out to me. But that I can understand that being a sore spot.
Yeah, I had a few difficulty spikes throughout the game. The Mythal one being one. That was, I think, the only quest that I ever walked away from and came back to because that dragon fight was so hard. But I thought overall the balancing was like so clean and so crisp.
Yeah.
Of like, there were every now and then there'd be one that's like, man, this is really difficult. I've died once or twice. I got to really be smart about when I use my ultimate. I got to be really smart about when I use my detonations with my team. But otherwise, for the most part, it was usually kind of a cakewalk, which was good. Like, you felt that powerful, like, I am Rook. I can defeat anything in the Blight or the Venatori or the Antam or whatever. But overall, like, I don't know that I would go as far as to say this is a 10 for me. Even though I said Astrobot's a 10, and I'm now saying that Dragon Age the Veilguard is my game of the year.
Oh, normalize it.
But I feel like this is like solid 9 to 9.5 for me. Where do you fall for this?
I'm right there, and I almost didn't want to like lead Jerica into this because I didn't want to like allude to things getting better because in some ways that could be a spoiler too. But like I feel like where she was, I would probably be around an 8 too. And I think one thing that I really didn't hit on is like how good the last section of the game is. God, they stick the landing on that mission. Like overall, making those decisions, having those interactions, like they nailed the final act.
No one does a final mission
for me
like BioWare.
No.
Like you mentioned it earlier, like it's very adjacent to the suicide mission of Mass Effect 2.
For sure.
Like I'm glad they did it that way because it fucking works.
For sure.
I've spent for me
they
70 hours bonding with all these characters. And I've laid with one, so have you. Like there's that connection. So
for sure.
Give me the fucking odds. Let me go against the odds and let me choose who to send the scout or where to send the scout, where to send the warrior, where to send the mage. Like it's just so satisfying.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe that everyone died for you.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I give it a 9 out of 10. And it's right now slotted like tentatively at like my number 4 favorite game of the year.
Hell yeah. I love it. Well, let us know what you thought. Spoilers allowed because we've both beaten the game. You can email us, mail@spotlightgames.net, or you can follow us everywhere on socials as you see right below me at Spotlight Games Pod. Jake, thank you so much for coming on. What a lovely, I've been wanting to talk like this about this game for so long. This hit the spot.
This is nice.
Where can the folks at home find you?
I am Jake Twitching on all platforms. Just go to amazingstreamer.com and start clicking around.
Hell yeah.
We'll see it.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Open door anytime. As I said at the top of the show, we will be back next week with some Spotlight Game streams. So expect to see us this time and next week for another episode of Spotlight Games podcast. And we'll see who's sitting across from me next week, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about video games as we always do, but thank you for being here. We thank you. We love you. We will see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.